Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. This is the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Catch us live weekdays at 7 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay or Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
Right now, and joining us, and last night when this was blowing up, I said, get me Mandeep Singh. He'll join us in a bit here. But Anurag Rana joins us now from Chicago with a little different take than Mandeep, more on the cloud, more on the systems analysis, if you will, of these big companies. Anurag, thank you so much for joining. You don't do buy, hold, sell, but would you suggest the sell side will shift opinion today?
For the cloud providers, I don't think so, because as Paul just mentioned about the tweet from Microsoft CEO, he's probably a little bit happier because for him, if the cost curve goes down in the long run, and we don't know if that's going to happen, his adoption rate goes up and his capex goes down. So it's in a roundabout way. Now, we don't think there is going to be an impact on capex in the near term, but in the long run, if that just shifts, it helps their profitability. But more important to that, the enterprise, you could say, take rate on AI adoption goes up.
The theme this morning, Paul's been great about this, is like drunken sailors. From where, and Anurag, you're just world class at this. Are they drunken sailors in terms of capex, or is there a plan? Is there a sequence? Is there a pace to spending billions?
So one of the things, if you would say, is if this AI adoption curve, which is absolutely in infancy right now, the only thing we have seen is in the consumer world. If enterprises start to put this in their core applications, then they would need a lot more, you could say, firepower to run it. Most of the things that we have discussed is people would not want to do this on their own premise. The bigger companies will, but most of them will go to a handful of cloud providers, and that would be Microsoft, AWS, Google, and then Oracle. So for all these companies to increase their capacity now, they're only seeing the orders, and based on that, they are expanding their data center footwork. The question is whether do they need the expensive chips to do with this, or can they run this with cheaper chips? And that's really, I think, the biggest discussion going to be over the next 12 months.
Anurag, like Tom has often want to say, my head is spinning here. Just since Friday, I've got a big tech company called Meta. I call it Facebook, given the IPO. We spent a lot of time thinking about that name in the ticker FB. They upped their capex from $50 billion to $65 billion, in large part on AI. Now I've got this DeepSeek thinking about, I can do this at a much lower cost. How do we square those two things?
Yeah, but one thing is for sure, this DeepSeek news of the paper has been out for a while. So it did get publicized over the last few days. But I'd be very surprised if Meta, AWS, and Microsoft did not know about this. It has been around for a while. So both of them, both Meta and Microsoft, talked about their capex last week after knowing this news. So, they have more, they're far smarter than I am when it comes to this. So if they're taking up their capex, there must be a real need for it.
What's it mean for Cupertino? They're having an early morning. They don't have lattes at Cupertino. They got something. Lisa, what's the thing with the green powder in it?
The matcha?
The matcha,
please,
yeah.
That is
Anurag, they're having the matcha at Cupertino, some undrinkable bilge. What are they saying at Apple today?
They are actually smiling and saying, you guys fight it out and tell me what's the best large language model out there. I'll just put it in my phone and I won't even pay for it. So if you look at Apple right now, that's kind of the safety haven for people, is they're not spending that capex. If you look at that capex line, it hasn't moved at all in 2 years, and the free cash flow just keeps on coming. Their issue, honestly, is more so on the the growth side. They are having challenges in China. That needs to smoothened out over the next 12 months. Otherwise, this is going to be another year for them to grow only 4-5%. That's the big issue for them, nothing to do with AI.
All right, well, let's just stay on the Apple story. Its stock's down 11% year to date this year. It's only up 15% over the trailing 12 months, which is radical underperformance for a company like Apple. Is there a bull case here short term for Apple?
In the short term, it's very difficult to come up with a bull case because as we talked about it even, a few months ago, Apple Intelligence is not going to be out in other parts of the world. It's not out in China. And China is where they are struggling, honestly, at this point. And they need to come out and pacify investors that, we have a strategy in China. We will gain market share back. Otherwise, this is going to be another muted year for them. We think the next phone, which is the one that's coming out in September, I know that's far. I think that's the big catalyst, but that's that's 8 months out, 9 months out.
All right. Anurag Rana with us in Chicago right now. We welcome all of you on your commute across the nation. For those of you in the office, at home, on YouTube, thank you for being on YouTube today. Just brilliant live chat. I'm learning a lot from people smarter than me on the YouTube live chat this morning. Subscribe at Bloomberg Podcast. That's the best way to get to the show out there. This is a rare privilege, and for senior management listening on radio right now, we adhere to their policy, which is Anurag Rana and Mandeep Singh can never be in the same room together. It's too much risk to the franchise. But Paul, why don't you bring in Mandeep Singh as we talk to both Anurag Rana and Mandeep?
Mandeep Singh covers the technology space along with Anurag Rana. There are two leaders globally running our technology franchise, and it is a global franchise, analysts in Europe, Asia, and North America. Mandeep, I guess what we're hearing, Satya Nadella from Microsoft put out something that, hey, costs coming down is pretty natural for the technology space. That happens, and it's a good thing because it helps adoption. Does that make sense to you?
Well, clearly, I think the investor expectations were different, which is why you see this sort of stock reaction. So yes, we have Moore's Law and we have other laws in terms of figuring out how the cost curve may look like over time. But clearly, this is a step change in terms of what you can do with the existing chips that are out there, as well as what you will need going forward. So I think this is a big moment in terms of just the efficiency that we can see with these chips and the kind of scale that is required for the next versions of these foundational models. But there is no doubt that this makes generative AI more accessible to software companies as well as overall users.
Anurag, what do you think this means to I know you guys at Bloomberg Intelligence, you have access to this IDC data, which is some of the best data on technology spending in the marketplace, and you guys feature that in your research. Is this going to change IDC's forecast of tech spending, AI spending, do you think?
So AI spending has been going up, Paul. We've talked about this a few times, but it's the other non-AI spending that has actually not done so well in the last 2 years. And over the next, I would say, month and a half, we will get a much clearer picture if corporations or enterprises are moving up their overall tech budgets or not. Because right now, AI spending is coming at the expense of areas such as normal software or just boring hardware upgrades or consulting. That really needs to pick up because a large portion of the tech ecosystem is some of those companies.
Mandeep, I think when I think of this news today, I'm like everybody else, our listeners and viewers are learning about DeepSeek and what it means. I can't help but think about TikTok. At some point, I feel like by the end of business today, we're going to have a story coming out of Washington. There's going to be an opinion coming from Washington as it relates to DeepSeek. Does it pose a similar risk, do you think, to TikTok from a regulator's perspective?
Well, it's still, the app is still, early in terms of adoption. And look, I'm sure it's got millions of users in East Asia and, China and whatnot. But I think when it comes to AI, consumers just look at the functionality and, the fact that they have an app which is accessible for free as opposed to paying $200 a month. True. They'll end up using it. So it's the same argument with TikTok. They will go with the functionality. They don't care about the privacy and the data.
Mandeep Singh with us and Anurag Rana, we continue. Anurag, let's go to earnings. Let's like remove ourselves from DeepSeek. What is the character of the cloud mystery that you see into earnings season, Anurag?
Yeah, we are anticipating an improvement in growth rates for both Microsoft and AWS going in. In fact, Microsoft, we are hoping they come out and increase their guidance for Azure numbers for the next 2 quarters. They have been struggling with supply challenges where they are not able to fulfill the demand that's coming in their data centers. And if they give that signal, that that should revive or pacify some of the fears that we are seeing right now in the market. Same thing for AWS. AWS has been talking about a recovery in consumption for their core business. We are looking forward to some comments on that as well from them. So I'm hopeful that both companies will come up with good numbers over the next 10 days.
But let's say it's not like Procter & Gamble. It's not a unit and price story at the revenue line. But where is the fear into earnings season, Anurag, on the income statement? Is it a margin fear, a revenue fear, or something I don't understand?
I think it's going to be a backlog/revenue fear more than the margins, because everybody understands this is a very unique business. When you have a fixed cost business like this, you can scale it up in the near term, but once you reach a mature phase, all the revenue comes back, or you can distribute that over a very large platform. That has been the case for cloud over the last 10 years. So in an expansion of capacity, people don't really see that as a big issue in the near term.
Mandeep, last Friday, Meta took their CapEx guidance from $50 billion, which was consensus, which was kind of guidance, up to $65 billion. I've never seen that before in order of magnitude. What's going on there?
Well, and I guess they probably knew this DeepSeek advancement, so it's not as if they were caught off guard with the DeepSeek release. So they did it despite the whole thing around DeepSeek. So to my mind, every company is doubling down on AI right now, even though we are talking about pricing compression and whatnot. But this is the moment where generative AI will be incorporated in all software, all applications, and every company wants a piece of it, so they don't mind spending more on CapEx.
The elephant in the room, Anurag, does the public want AI? Is there any interest that Lisa Mateo is waiting and waiting and waiting for AI?
See, the thing is, the consumers have already embraced it through ChatGPT, through Gemini, through Perplexity. But when you look at the enterprise use case, we are still in the building phase. And that's probably what this year is going to be like. Next year, we should see a much faster adoption by companies in terms of, and that usage will show up in cloud numbers. Right now, even when you look for somebody like a Microsoft, most of their AI revenue is from consumer app, which is basically OpenAI's ChatGPT.
So, all right, Tom, we'd like to talk to Anurag and
Do you
Mandeep.
feel like Ed Ludlow this morning?
No, you just
we're like, this
fire
might
hose.
as well be Bloomberg Tech.
Exactly.
Can I get the shoes with the white soles?
Yes.
I
that's
don't
what
have them.
even David Weston has that.
Do you have shoes with the white soles?
No.
No.
Anurag, are you wearing shoes with the white soles?
No, I don't.
Old school.
Okay, old school.
And Tom, Mandeep and Anurag, they're pretty good, but the research, the real investment research on this whole DeepSeek Chinese AI, Robert Lee.
Yes, Hong
He's
Kong.
our Bloomberg Intelligence analyst in Hong Kong. So folks who have access to the Bloomberg terminal, go there, because Mandeep and Anurag,
What's he say?
They're just.
What's he say?
He was out with research a couple of months ago on this, and he says, "Hey, this stuff is there."
Okay, well, go to that, Mandeep. Lee in Hong Kong was way out front of this. Why are we stunned this morning?
Well, because he didn't pound the table in terms of saying like.
But I mean,
throwing
it's
this
an
guy under the table.
We're negative. What are we? Negative 3.5% on the Nasdaq right now. What? I mean, let's bring it back to.
I'm putting
7
Robert
o'clock
on a
a.m.
plane, Tom,
What
today,
happened?
bringing him over to New York.
Like, what happened? Why were we surprised by this?
No, I don't think we were surprised, because open source has been talked about a lot. We have been talking about how companies are looking to, drive scaling at inference time, and how pricing was a constraint. And so, look, this is the way the industry was headed. It's just that DeepSeek came out with a long paper that describes what they did in detail, and everyone else is kind of closed source. So being open source has its advantages, and that's what we are seeing with DeepSeek here.
So the barriers to entry here, Anurag, just in general on AI, are the barriers to entry low for AI?
I think that's exactly what this paper that Mandeep is alluding to is talking about, that you and I can go out and build some of this thing without much capital. Now, the question is, how are you going to distribute it? And which is why I go back to the cloud providers, that those are the guys who are going to work with enterprises to embed some of this technology. If you look at somebody like an AWS, they work with all these providers. They work with Meta's Llama model or Anthropic's Claude models. So it's really up to the customer which model they choose, or sometimes they would reroute the inquiry based on what's better for that particular question. So it's really the distribution. What I'm saying is the value here, which takes us back to the cloud providers and also to Apple.
This has been fun. Anurag Rana, you're a trooper to get up this early in Chicago. Anurag Rana with Bloomberg Intelligence and Mandeep Singh. Can we say, on behalf of all of us, Mandeep, thank you so much. Sure. Okay, we'll try not to do it 3 times tomorrow. Maybe once, or maybe we'll see you Wednesday or whatever. Mandeep Singh and Anurag Rana is what the show's about, just world class on technology.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Catch us live weekday afternoons from 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Listen on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Or watch us live on YouTube.
We get lucky. Joe Weisenthal has done so much for Bloomberg, I should say for business journalism, and of course his work here at Bloomberg with Tracy Alloway. But one of the great things is Paul, I'm like AI, EIO. Joe's actually doing it.
Nobody
he said,
does it, but
he looked at the summer tour of Light Sweet Crude and said, I can't do the Light Sweet Crude analysis without AI. 3 days ago, you nailed DeepSeek. You're using it at home.
Yeah.
What's the experience of DeepSeek?
So I'll just say there are 2 main takeaways for me. One is I have never experienced any technology in the history of any tech, computers, apps, whatever, that have 0 switching cost the way AI chatbots have.
Really?
I used ChatGPT for a long time. Claude came out. The one from Anthropic. I was like, oh, this works too.
Have you used Gemini?
I've used Gemini. For some reason, that one hasn't stuck as much. But then DeepSeek came out, and I saw the chatbot last week online, and I was like, I'm going to try this out. It took me 30 seconds to register, and I was like, this is just as good as what I'm getting from ChatGPT. I ask it random things during the day, and what strikes me is like, there's just zero
it appropriate for radio? Can we ask what you ask?
It's all, I ask it random historical questions or linguistic. I'm interested in linguistics.
Like, why did Texas lose to Ohio State?
No, I can't. That's too painful. No, I don't ask that. But then the other thing is, I made a 2025, one of my New Year's resolutions.
Yep.
I've never coded. I said, I'm going to try and code something with AI.
Really?
One of my goals, yeah. And so I started building a little software by just asking it create this code. And I was able to plug my app that I'm building on my home, it's a little linguistics app, into the DeepSeek API. And it's like a fraction of the cost of what I use for the OpenAI API. So I just played around with it. I was like, wow, here's this thing that seems just as good as ChatGPT.
What this guy's
Sorry, here's this thing that seems just as good as
Lisa, can you have a
ChatGPT.
sip of your mimosa? Yeah.
So it's I'm not surprised that
All right, the dumb question
Yeah.
are we not using Google anymore because of this
No,
stuff?
I still. Well, look, it is. I still use Google all the time. I still use Wikipedia all the time. They're just different
But
types
what's
of.
your initial go-to? Oh, I need to know about this. I just
It
go to
really
my Google.
depends on the context. I gotta say, I really like using AI for things like understanding a term within a specific context or something like that, or something. But you don't know if it's true, so I always do a backup. I see something and then I say, oh, look at Google. It's like, is this actually true or whatever?
Morgan Brown, Dropbox, Imperial Double E. He's out with the smartest note I've seen where he's talking about decimal points. I don't want to go into that. You and Tracy at Odd Lots talk a lot more to techie people about this. What's their message on the future of American AI versus these shock threats?
I mean, here's what my take, which is that they're already. I mean, we saw the Trump announcement last week with Stargate, right? $500 billion.
I thought that was the movie with Spader. James
Well, what's
Spader.
happening now, I think, because of the arrival of this very compelling Chinese model, is it just cements the notion that there is a global arms race a la the bomb. And I don't know if achieving AGI or whatever people talk about is a breakthrough on par or as strategic as a nuclear bomb. But now everyone is just going to be, we have to beat them, we have to beat them. And there's going to be so much money flowing to tech companies now in this idea that there is a global race.
Joe, I feel like by the end of business today, the top story on the Bloomberg Terminal will be U.S. government looking at DeepSeek as it's looking at TikTok.
Well, so this is interesting. The other thing, and thanks for reminding me of this, which is that DeepSeek is a piece of open source software. It's unbannable. Now there is an app that theoretically could be banned from the App Store, but I think it would be hard. But it's a piece of open source software. Okay. I have a friend. You can run it on your own computer if you have the. And so this is fundamentally different from TikTok in the sense that anyone can run this piece of code, just download it, and so it's fundamentally unbannable.
You've been on fire. Adam Tooze this weekend raving about your Eurodollar three-part series. You have Howard Marks on. Good morning, Mr. Marks. Thank you so much for your support over the years. What's your message from Howard Marks about this odd market?
He doesn't think we're in an AI bubble yet. He said, he
doesn't see the exuberance.
He doesn't see, which I thought was really interesting, because to me it feels like exuberance, but the idea of me questioning Howard Marks on questions like what is exuberance really feels like, someone who has experienced multiple cycles over the years. Right. I don't think I would go with my take versus his take.
Okay. Did you go to NAM? Were you out in NAM?
No, but one of my bandmates was.
Well, the endorsements Light Sweet Crude has. Should I go with the Gretsch Pink Ranger Penguin?
Yeah, you got it.
It's got the Fishman pickups.
You got it.
I mean, it's $5.49 in Sweetwater. I'll tell Mrs. Keene it's $1.49. It's like you got to.
It's free.
And it's pink.
Yeah. And it's Jeff Beck, is that done? The Jeff Beck auction?
Oh, yeah, they did the auction.
That's done? Okay.
Joe bid. But I'm sorry, Gretsch is on fire.
You got to get
Gretsch is on fire.
Yeah, that's the real breakthrough.
Fender bought Gretsch, and,
There you go.
What's Light Sweet Crew doing? You're playing?
We have a show this Wednesday, the 11th Street Bar in Manhattan. It's free, 8 o'clock. East Village. Everyone should come out. We're going to play some new songs.
Are you really I'm in bed at 8:30. Does it really start at 8, or are you doing the rock star thing?
We have an opening act at 8. We're going to be on just after 9. But
it's just after midnight.
Just come out. It's one night.
Yeah, but I'll be brain dead the next morning.
59th Street. I don't think so.
You have one off day the next day.
Okay. So you got Howard Marks coming up on Odd Lots.
It's out today. Check it out.
Oh, okay. Joe Weisenthal.
Great.
Thank you so much. And really, folks, follow Joe, the stalwart on Twitter, and also follow Joe on LinkedIn, where he's really going step by step through his experience with AI, which I think is really cool.
This is the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Listen live each weekday starting at 7 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. You can also listen live on Amazon Alexa from our flagship New York station. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Stacy Raskin is double chemical engineering definitive out of UCLA and MIT. He wandered back to the Avenue of the Stars, where he is a star for Bernstein. What you need to know is in the old days, you had a black-covered book from Sanford Bernstein, and you knew, good morning, Brad Hintz, that you were dealing with the best. Stacey, honored that you could join us this morning. Will you change buy, hold, sell on the American tech companies because of this DeepSeek announcement?
I mean, look, so we haven't changed anything. We did, killed ourselves over the weekend to go through some of this stuff and put some views in place. Like I had 3 kind of broad takeaways from the work. But number one is, I think there's been a headline, but I think this is why the circus. There was a headline that kind of came out of this that was kind of like, hey, DeepSeek duplicated OpenAI for $5 million. And everyone, so I do not think they duplicated OpenAI for $5 million. Number 2, look, I think the models that they built are fantastic. They're really, really good, but I don't think they're miracles. We can talk about why. And number 3, finally, like I think the panic, and there's clearly a full-blown on panic going on over the weekend and into this morning. I think it's overblown. I think I do not think that DeepSeek is the doomsday for AI infrastructure.
For those of you out on radio, on YouTube, you can see a space shuttle behind a gentleman from MIT. I didn't even know that. I lived that, Stacy, and we were certain it worked until the heat panels didn't work in January of 1986. Do we have a certitude that this stuff is going to work for NVIDIA or Microsoft or the other 14 names you follow?
I cover 10 names. Microsoft and some of the others are covered by my colleagues that cover semiconductors. When you talk about work, like I don't understand what you mean. So the question here is, these models look really efficient, and the resources that were required to train them, look lower than what we've seen from some other models in the past. And then we can look at where they're actually pricing the stuff, and they're pricing it, and they're pricing it at levels that are quite a bit lower, where say OpenAI makes their models available if you want to go use them. And so the question is, given all of that, do you need fewer GPUs? Right? That's the big question, and fewer infrastructure build outs and everything else. And so, I mean, just to talk about this, like what have they done? Right? They've got two flavors of models. They've got something called V3, which is sort of like a chat model. It uses something called a mixture of experts that makes it very efficient. And they've got a reasoning model called O1, where they used reinforcement learning and some other techniques from the V3 base model to build rivals to, say, to OpenAI's O1 reasoning model. If you look at the why they're so efficient in terms of the training that they did on, and the compute resources they used to train the V3 models, it's very efficient. They compared it to, say, like Llama 405B, and it took roughly 10% of the compute resources to train it than Meta's Llama 405B did. However, the structure of the model that makes sense. It uses something called a mixture of experts. That's the whole point. Other mixture of experts models that are out there, take anywhere from, a 6 to 1/7 as mount compute resources. This is a good one. It was like 1/10 or even better than that. But I don't think it's a miracle. And you got to remember, I'm a semiconductor analyst. Like, for 50 years, costs in semiconductors got cut in half. Like, for every 2 years for 50 years. That was not a bad thing for semiconductor, man. That was a good thing. We all want adoption. To get adoption, we need lower costs. This is something called Jevons paradox, right? Like, increasing efficiency drives actually more demand, more net demand, not less demand. I'm a firm believer in that. I have a strong suspicion that if we can free up more compute resources, it will get used. Like, I don't think we're anywhere close to the end of compute needs for artificial intelligence. And we're going to need this, just given, the costs have been going up next year, right? We need this.
Paul, jump in here, but anytime anybody quotes William Stanley Jevons on the show, they get to come back.
They get to come
Continue.
back. Stacy, what do you expect to hear from the semiconductor companies that you cover in terms of their response to this news, whether it's NVIDIA or others?
Yeah, well, so we're in the middle of earnings season right now, so we'll see as they come out, right? But we forget the semiconductor companies for a minute. We've already seen like some of the other responses, and you have to remember everything that we've seen DeepSeek doing. Like, I don't want to dismiss it. Like, they're really good and very efficient. They're very smart engineers, but these are not things that are not known, and these are not things that the other top tier AI researchers and AI labs are not aware of and potentially already using themselves, right? And if we look at what we saw last week, on top of all of this, clearly spending is going up, not down. So Meta just significantly increased their capex, I think, on Friday, right? We had the whole Stargate announced, and $500 billion, whatever that is. And even China a few days ago announced a 1 trillion yuan, which is about $140 billion US, sort of like sovereign AI effort, right? So clearly spending is still going up, not down. And these models, like I said, they didn't just dump on us yesterday. The DeepSeek V3 was released at the end after Christmas.
Tracy, Stacy, I got to get this in. It's too important. At UCLA, you had to survive Physics 1A a few years ago. The smartest thing I've seen is that American AI is trying to go out to 32 decimal points, where the Chinese are saying, you know what? 8 decimal points is okay. Is this a question of granularity, or we're being too perfect in AI, and the Chinese are saying you don't need to be too perfect?
No, so they use they use mixed precision. They use mixed precision numbers to train this stuff. They use floating point 8-bit numbers. You typically use floating point 16 or floating point 32. It's actually really interesting. So in NVIDIA, with their Hopper generation, which is the H100 and the H800s, it has something called on it. It's actually called a transformer engine. Okay? What that actually did was it enabled you to train at 8-bit precision. And in fact, Blackwell, which is their next generation stuff that's coming on now, actually enables 4-bit precision. So no, these are things that everybody is looking at. It may be that DeepSeek is the first ones to actually deploy this in a very large model, but these are things they're looking at. And if you actually look over time, we've seen the numerical precisions that people are using coming in. And by the reason you do this is you get more compute. If I go from 16-bit to 8, in theory, I get twice as many flops, twice as many operations per second. But no, these are things that have been happening all along. This is just the next step, and they're again. I don't want to dismiss them. Like I said, they've done some really clever things, but none of this is a miracle, and none of this I think is an unknown or a slap in the face to the other AI labs and researchers.
We're out of time. Don't be a stranger. You're a trooper to get up this early. Yep. Really, really appreciate it. He's in Los Angeles. Daily lunches at Michael's. They're closed now because of the fire.
Oh, is that right?
But I'm sure when Michael's reopens, Stacey will be there. Stacey Raskin with Bernstein, Definitive there.
This is the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Listen live each weekday starting at 7 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. You can also watch us live every weekday on YouTube and always on the Bloomberg Terminal.
The Daily Look at the front pages is brought to you by IBKR. Will the average U.S. temperature in January 2025 be greater than 34 degrees? Trade your prediction with IBKR Forecast Trader. The yes was recently at 14%, makes sense. Buy yes or no and earn $1 if you're right. Go to ibkr.com/forecast. Interactive Brokers, ibkr.com/forecasts. We dash to the newspapers. Lisa, tell me, we're DeepSeek free
we are
for the
DeepSeek
newspapers
free.
today?
I know. Trying to do something a little different. We've talked about more companies pushing workers back to the office, right? But not everyone at the company is being treated the same. They're saying it's causing a lot of tension now in the workplace because you have some people in the company, like the top performers, the employees with those certain skill sets, they're being given that flexibility.
Yeah, Michael Barr.
Yeah, Michael, he comes in once in a while because the companies don't want to lose them to other companies. It's that whole thing of stealing each other's workers. So it's a lot of tension in the workplace that's starting to cause a tension between the managers and the staff on top of it. So
it's really fluid. I mean, into the warmer season, into spring, to me, it's a hugely fluid debate.
Some people take Fridays off in the summertime, I've heard.
Oh, they do?
Yes, what I've heard.
We missed that memo.
It works out. It works out with me and Paul because he takes every Friday off, and I'm like, year-end, the famine, all that.
It works out.
Next,
what do you does. We want to go to the airline industry because you're seeing this shift in the pricing power now going back to the carriers. If you've been pricing tickets out there, you've noticed prices for the cheapest flights up 12% this month from a year earlier. That's according to Hopper. But the airlines are saying people are going to pay it no matter what. And they're saying people are paying it. Domestic, yes, international as well.
JFK and to Paris? What do we got on JFK to Paris?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much of a deal there you're getting. But they're saying what's shifting too is that the discount airlines, you've seen them, who usually go to these, consumer, budget conscious people, they're starting to shift to the more advanced. And then you have the luxury sector. Now you have all these luxury items being offered out on the planes. So if you go on a flight, you may have a cosmetic bag filled with all these premium, lotions and perfumes.
Yeah.
You're getting caviar, champagne,
peanuts, and
caviar. I have not seen.
You have not seen yet.
I'm waiting to see the caviar.
You haven't gotten your Cristal champagne?
At Newark, what is it, Hudson River Sturgeon?
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, everything's a la carte, though. You pay for everything now. So, I mean, the bags, the this, that, the better seats. So,
we had an offspring at the airport with a lot of luggage call up and say, I can't believe what they're, they want from me right now for 3 extra bags or whatever.
3 extra.
2 weeks in Europe with 1 check-in.
Yep.
That's it.
I don't take it.
You don't take it back.
I don't take anything.
No, the kids, they take too much stuff today. Next.
And lastly, okay, so you heard about Costco is switching back from Coke, back to Coke from Pepsi.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's big.
That's huge for you. I know, Paul. You're the Coke Pepsi guy.
I'm a Coke person, but I won't die on that hill. I mean, you put a Pepsi in front of me, I'll be fine.
But it's like this huge debate on social media.
Explain at Costco on a Saturday morning, Coke, no Pepsi.
Yeah, people are like rabid. They want it with their $1.50 hot dog. They want to have their certain soda because they're used to it.
Can you tell the difference?
I can't.
Wait, you haven't had a Coke?
You haven't had a soda.
You haven't had a Coke or
years.
Pepsi since Nixon was president.
No, I'm the soda person here, and I actually have almost a year and a half. I put in a ticket every day to bring back the soda machines on the 6th floor. It's going up to the highest level of Bloomberg.
But if you did the blind taste test, could you tell the difference? You could.
You can tell a difference.
Yeah, but again, I'm a Coke person, but you put a Pepsi in front of me, just as happy. I mean, I don't know. Anybody else back there? Any opinions? I mean, Coke, Pepsi? I don't know. Who cares?
I don't know.
But the organic stuff they have on the 6th floor has to go. If somebody's listening that can do something here at Bloomberg, get rid of it. They have organic soda on the 6th floor. I mean,
that's un-American.
It's un-American, exactly. So I'm talking to the highest people here at Bloomberg to get our soda machines
The
back.
newspapers. Lisa Mateo, thank you so much.
This is the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast, available on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Listen live each weekday, 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg.com, the iHeartRadio app, TuneIn, and the Bloomberg Business app. You can also watch us live every weekday on YouTube and always on the Bloomberg Terminal.